Indo-Russian delegates. No, but never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would be facing such well-read and experienced people over here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure indeed to be among you. As I've seen this event unfolding and the huge success I think this forum has had, what I can see is this whole relationship between India and Russia is really going to be headed in the right direction. Being a member of the so-called logistics industry, I can say that it is apt for me to talk about logistics, the current vertical, the state it is in, and the hurdles we face between India and Russia, and how I feel the right way, and if logistics is given the right platform, it will be the right, to create the right impetus for this whole economic move to go ahead. When you say logistics, what do you feel? What do you think? What do you understand when we say logistics? Trucks moving on the highway, forklifts picking up cargoes, pallets from the containers, putting it in the warehouse. There are some who just say, okay, barcoding, RFID tags, information online. But I think that's not logistics. Logistics is basically about the warehouse manager sitting in the standing back and pacing back and forth, worried, stressed out, thinking about where his cargo is. He's thinking about his inventory. He's thinking about the huge stockpile of his inventory, or rather lack of it. He's more worried. And logistics is also about a sales rep who wants to increase his sales targets and is faced with a huge sales target, but he's not able to meet it because he does not have a delivery schedule, or maybe an erratic delivery schedule. So, ladies, as if you see, the reason why we have logistics, I think fundamentally it should be about the customer, what he wants, and at what time are we able to deliver that need of the customer. I've read somewhere that basic logistics is basically inventory in rest or inventory in motion. I think you can put it in that way. As we think about, as I read about, and as I understand both our countries, Russia and India, these are just they are not typical companies, and they've got their own special needs. The logistics requirements of both the countries are somewhat unique and different to what we face in the Western world. Just aping the Western world need not be say that what is necessarily right in the Western world need not be right in India or Russia. This country has got its own special needs, and we need to adapt ourselves to these needs. The irony which I see of all these years when I've been spending in this industry, the irony which I see normally is that the distributors themselves in Russia are more involved in logistics than logistics guys themselves, and that's really quite amusing, because ideally I see logistics companies are not very cooperative in planning supplies of companies. They are not ready to do the huge paperwork involved in the transactions involved, and it's been they're not. Logistics companies should be talking about how to optimize the route between India and Russia, or between these two countries and the CIS also. Of course, but when you look at all this, the one perception which every company which is into trading between our countries is that these logistics companies unfortunately demand and command a very high price, and that's really very surprising. Requirements, when you look at it, when we talk about various industries requires various ways of doing logistics, or the way we do plan the supply chain. When I was just talking to somebody, a pharma company typically talks about how do I have my cargo's temperature control? Will it be in ambient temperature? You talk to an electronics guy and he says, how can you avoid, a minimum amount of loading and unloading of my goods? I want it to go as fast as possible, no dwell time in the ports. Can you do that for me? You have maybe slow moving goods like luxury beverages and wine, and various slow-moving items which require prolonged storage. Unfortunately, in both the countries, good quality storage space is not at all, it's in a very high demand and is scarcely available. There are some big companies which I was just going through it. The requirements, of course, are too high in terms of, they want us to understand the IT infrastructure, and they want us to somehow, inculcate the whole process inside the systems, and we are able to give them on time. So the IT infrastructure required is quite high, and we need to be ready for that, and we need to adapt ourselves to that scenario. When we look at, St. Petersburg, we have been doing business through various modes into India, Russia, and when we look at St. Petersburg as a port, it's a fairly congested port. More than, when you look at raw materials, it's okay when it's raw materials, like it's quite independent in terms of movement. But when you look at other goods like pharma, electronics, and the other FMCG products, more than 80% of the cargo they pass through Moscow. So you got a port there, and then all these cargoes invariably pass through Moscow because the rail and road which has been developed all pass through Moscow. In fact, we have some cargoes which also come from Belarus and Ukraine going through Moscow. So when you look at the flow of cargo in Moscow is very, very high, and that's actually because everybody talks about getting goods to Moscow and then distributing it from Moscow to all over Russia, at least the western part of Russia, east. When we understand this whole scenario, it's quite abnormal, because being such a big country, I think what is actually required is we have distribution points spread all over the country so that we can store goods and distribute. This is when we look at it, almost half of the market, if you look at it. And when we talk about St. Petersburg as a port, the amount of, because it's not a 365-year open port, and we need to have ice cutters and somehow to get this thing working in the port. It's a high investment area. And when we look at a high investment area, the margins which we are going to get from St. Petersburg as a port is going to be not so high, because you have got competition with the Baltic ports and Kotka and all these ports vying for the share of the cargo. So what do? It's a very high investment. So what has happened because of this high investment and low margin scenarios, we look at Petersburg. It's like St. Petersburg has got maybe 2 or 3 state-owned brokerage firms trying to do clearance and distribution from St. Petersburg. Moscow, fair and large, is okay because you got around 5, you got around a couple of dozen custom brokers who are trying to distribute and arrange the clearance for us. Petersburg is an irony because you have got 50 to 60% of business of clearance done through St. Petersburg, done by one state-owned company, and that's really that's not the right model for the right logistics and for the distribution for this country. As as a country, and fair enough for India as such, you can put it in this way that long term, we need to have a long term goal and a short term goal. The long term goal, I would say, for the Russian government would be actually to put investments into ports themselves, creating more warehouse facilities, developing the right IT structure. The customs union also has to be amalgamated with the right IT structure for us to ensure that we have shipments moving smoothly and we are able to reach cargoes on time at the time it is needed. I would also suggest to a lot of Indian companies, the first thing which they have to look at it when they try to do Russia is, and for a Russian customer is, the huge amount of delivery time we take when we have to deliver anything from Russia, if we have to deliver anything from India to Russia, it's huge. There are some commodities when we look at it, when we are doing day-to-day business, ICC, it takes 120 to 130 days or 150 days to actually execute a business from order to delivery to the customer. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, is not at all acceptable, because I feel for Indian business to develop in Russia, the Indian customers also, the Indian suppliers need to know that they need to reduce the delivery period of executing a project or order given to them.